everyone, and welcome to On Sprue Review. My name is Violet Sun, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the new model of the Phoenix Lord of the Dark Reaper Shrine, Maugan Ra. It's made by Games Workshop for the Warhammer 40,000 line. Now, throughout this review, I'm going to be pronouncing it Maugan Ra rather than Maugan Ra, to make him sound slightly less like an emo catboy, even if his taste in clothing says otherwise. Let's begin as we do, taking a little look at the box. The front is gorgeous artwork of studio painted miniature with a nice backdrop. As I've mentioned before, much prefer these kind of backdrops with some nicely detailed terrain rather than a boring old plain box. And on the back side, just some more close-ups of the studio miniature and some links to the Games Workshop websites. Pretty plain box, this one. Of course, what we're here for, what's in the box. Of course, instruction booklet, important as it says, read this first. I don't think this model would be too tough for anyone to put together. It's a grand total of 14 pieces. I don't think anyone's going to struggle to put this model together. It's quite a nice, simple model. Instructions seem quite clear. There's no painting advice for colours within the booklet or on the back of the box, which is quite unusual. Although this model is mostly black and bone, colours that are quite familiar for most people who've done any painting of Citadel miniatures. And they're colours that I'm sure people can find tutorials for online. And there's a little bit of rules on the back, simplified datasheet. Of course, you get your sprue and the base for the model. So let's have a look at the sprue, shall we? And today I'm going to start off with the weapon. This is definitely one of the largest weapons carried by any infantry-sized model in 40k. The Maugan Ra, I believe it's called. One of these weapons so cool it has its own name. It's a big shuriken cannon with an extra blade. This is very similar to the original mold for this character. I should say the original model sculpted by Jez Goodwin. This model sculpted by Darren Latham, who is one of my favourite sculptors. I wish Games Workshop would give their sculptors some more credit like they used to, but luckily Darren is brave enough to share that he was the person behind this on his personal Twitter account. This weapon has been quite nicely updated from the previous sculpt. Mostly the biggest change is the scythe style blade on the end, which has been made to look more like the more modern Dark Eldar husk blades. It's got that kind of gnarly, organic, wraithbone blade look to it. Now I want to look at something, a little bit of an odd choice with this sculpt. The main body piece, the head, is all contained within the same moulding, along with part of his legs, part of his arms. I mean, the detailing is very nice, and once you've got the separate front of the hood over it, I think it will look even better. But it's very odd to see this model is, I think, going to be quite difficult to put in any pose other than when it came in, just because of the breakdown of the parts. I will say, though, I really like this cloak. The tattered detail on it looks, I mean, somewhat stylized, sort of like you would see in a comic book rather than realistic tattering. But I think it looks nice, and it's very thin. Even though it's been thinned down at the edges especially, but even in the centre it's very thin. Sometimes these kind of cloaks, Games Workshop ends up building like extra dimensionality in the thickness in odd places, and it ends up at certain angles looking not like a cloak anymore because it's too thick to be a cloak. Another piece of the kit that's been massively updated is this backpack spine targeting array piece. these kind of ribby details have been added before. On the previous sculpt, it was just kind of a spine with a head sticking out of the model's back. I'm not sure if this has a particular name within the Eldar lore, but looks pretty cool, I think. And of course, because it's a cell model, compulsory skulls. Being a kind of Reaper-styled model, it's not surprising that Maugan Ra is quite scully for an Eldar. They tend to be one of the armies that you don't see a ton of skulls on, but he has these very large skull shoulder pads, which look just like they did on the Jez Goodwin sculpt. I think Dan's done a great job of reproducing those in plastic. And to go along with those shoulder pads, there's this ribcage style chest piece. And of course, I mentioned before this spinal style backpack, which goes in with that bones theme. And another sneaky little skull on his waistband that's attached in this breakdown of the model as part of this loincloth, along with some typical Eldari symbols and gemstone, spirit stone piece. Let's have a look at his legs. Some extra detail on these. I think they're a little fancier than the original model was. One thing you can't really see so much from just looking at the sprue is the silhouette of this model is massively improved from the previous one, who was quite broad-shouldered and squat for an Eldar, whereas this model, he's been made longer-legged, a little less broad across the shoulders, and with the big dramatic coat piece, his silhouette's been changed massively. He is, as many Warhammer heroes do, he is kind of stood on this piece of rubble to give him even more height. He's quite an imposing figure, given that Eldar aren't the tallest out of the 40k races. I think he's going to end up being pretty impressive. There's a few nice little details, like his extra ammunition along another spirit stone. It's nice to see these separate pieces. I mean, they're sometimes a little fiddly to get on properly, but once they're in, they really add to the feel of the model. I mentioned it earlier, so I should really show you. This is the front of his hood. This is one of the pieces, one of the design choices I'm less in favour for. The hood itself, I think, is a nice idea, but this front trailing edge, I'm not so certain on. I might think about trimming that down myself and making it a little less dangly. It seems like it would get in the way of his reaping duties. And with that, I think I've shown you everything that I want to show on this model. Say it's only 14 pieces, which is considerably less than some of the others we've taken a look at already. I don't think it's any less detailed than previous models, but there are a few things like the body being and the cloak and the head all being one big piece in the centre here that really reduced the parts count. Whether you like that or not, I think is somewhat personal taste, and this model is going to be a little easier to put together for the clever combining of some of the pieces, but maybe it gives you a little less flexibility. And of course, it wouldn't be an on-sprue review without me talking about what I'm going to do with this model. I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to do a whole new Eldar army. I collected a Ynnari force a few years ago, mostly old metal models from 3rd edition and earlier, with a few newer plastics and bits and pieces thrown in. So I am a little bit tempted to do something a little bit more up to date. I do think I'm going to paint this model anyway, even just as a single display piece. I've got a few ideas. I want to do some callbacks to the Rogue Trader kind of look of Eldar with flames and sort of tribal markings, which I think will look quite nice on this sculpt. If you've already bought Maugan Ra or are planning on buying him, I'd really love to know what you're doing with him. I've seen some people suggest some wild conversions using him as a Necron Overlord and things like that. So if you've got a cool conversion idea, post it in the comments. If you found this review useful, please give it a like, and if you would like to see some more, subscribe. I'm planning on keeping up this pace of a review a week, maybe doing some extras if I find the time and inspiration. Thank you very much for your time, and happy hobbying.